Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Show. And I'm sure you always want to be a leader. Perhaps you think you're a leader. Today we're going to figure out how to lead with our special guest, Hall of Fame speaker, author, the one and only Mr. Joe Calloway. Now, let me share with you about who Joe is before we get started so you can learn about him. We'll dive into it with Joe as well. But Joe's client list reads like an international who's who in business, ranging from Coca-Cola to Verizon to Delta Airlines and American Express. And today he works with a wide range of business leaders of all sizes in their leadership and strategic planning retreats. Joe is a principal in the Disruption Lab. I'll talk about that, Joe, a consulting group that helps companies with innovative strategies. And he has served as executive in residence at Belmont University Centers for Entrepreneurship. Joe's the author of several amazing books, including Becoming a Category of One, How Extraordinary Companies Transcend Commodity and Defy Comparison. No doubt, and additional books such as Be the Best at What Matters Most, Magnetic, and so forth. Well, Joe, let's jump right into it. You are amazing. You've traveled the world. You are an expert. Should I say you're an expert in leadership? Is that a fair thing to say, Joe? Joe, welcome to the Massimo Show.
Well, I guess you could say I'm an expert. We'll put it this way. I'm a good learner. And I've worked with a lot of really great leaders. And so I'm a good learner, and I'm a good observer of what works. And I love passing that on to people.
Okay, so before we talk about these observations of what works, let's figure out how you got where you are today. So, Joe, I'm going to take you back, not way back, but back. Let's talk about teenage Joe. Where was Joe living? Where was he growing up? What were his passions back to those teenage years?
I grew up in a rural community in Tennessee, not terribly far. I'm in Nashville, and I grew up in a little town about an hour from here. And my passion when I was a teenager is that I was in rock and roll bands. And that was just the most fun. Listen, if I could have had my dreams come true, that's what I'd be doing now. And if I'd had a whole lot more talent, it would have happened.
Okay, now the audience is wondering, are we talking Kiss? Are we talking big hair 80s bands? What kind of band did you want to be in?
Rod, I'm so much way older than what you're shooting at. We're talking, golly, we're talking most late 60s.
Okay.
Rock and roll.
So the Doors, maybe?
We're talking Rolling Stones, Doors, Beatles, The Who. There you go.
Oh, man, you're talking fantastic classic bands.
It's classic rock for sure.
Singer, guitarist, drummer, keyboard, what were you?
I started off, I was a mediocre drummer, and then I went on to become a mediocre but very enthusiastic singer. So I was the front man. And with my limited vocal ability, it had to all be about the show.
Oh, yeah. Too bad there wasn't YouTube back then. We could have pulled something up for this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good thing.
Okay, so from rock and roll star to then becoming this thought leader. Give me the transformation, the evolution of from that point in your life to I don't know if you to college, early years of career. How did you get this point of where you are today, being a very sought after leader, thought leader, consultant?
Yeah, let me jump ahead to after college. I was working for the House of Representatives here in the state of Tennessee. I was very interested in all things political, but I really changed direction. I got kind of tired of the political stuff, and I went into the real estate business. With my brother-in-law, I moved from Nashville out to the state of Washington. And he was starting a little, mostly residential real estate sales firm. And I became the general manager of a little company. We had about, I don't know, maybe 10 agents. And here's what really got my attention. we had a meeting of the agents every morning for 1 hour. And that was my meeting because I got paid based on the revenue that the company generated. So my whole job was to help the agents be more successful. And I really got intrigued by and hooked on this idea of what can I come up with that will help these guys and gals be better at what they do. That was my whole purpose, was to help them succeed. And so I transitioned from that into doing all kinds of, I left the real estate business and went on my own, doing seminars and workshops for some real estate companies, some banks. And I was doing all sorts of stuff. It was time management and a lot of programs on sales. That evolved into people asking me to not do a training program, but come give a speech at, a trade association or whatever. That then grew into speaking at big conventions, be the keynote speaker on business. And it evolved over the years from customer service to talking about dealing with change to building your brand with your people. And then eventually the last few years, it's pretty much all been about leadership. And now I work with smaller groups. I don't do the big conventions anymore. I got full, done. Enough of that. I got to where what I really love now is doing very interactive, much smaller groups. Like, last week I worked with a group of 14 leaders in the landscaping industry. And it's very interactive, and it's about how can they be more effective as leaders. And so I'm really enjoying this phase of my career.
Okay, so from college to real estate firm to sales manager of the real estate firm, that led to some seminars, that led to some workshops, then some speeches. Yep. And you traveled all over the world with your speeches and that, yep. and talk about all the elements of sales and time management, but that evolved to a point of leadership. And now you're giving workshops on leadership. So Joe, let's start there. What makes a successful leader?
Boy, it's a lot of things. I tell you the word that popped in I don't have a set off the shelf answer for that. But when you asked that question, what popped into my mind was clarity. When I think about the leaders of organizations, big companies, little companies, even, like solo practitioners and how they lead themselves in effect. But one thing that they all have in common, Rod, is nobody wonders what's going on. Everybody's clear. Here's who we are, and that gets into culture. This is who we are. This is what we value. Here's what's important. Here's the way we treat each other and everybody else, and clarity on where we're going. What our vision is for the organization, and then also clarity on how to get there. So that theme of clarity just comes up over and over and over in the companies that I work with for the leaders that are really good and really effective.
So if what I heard you share, I believe, was that successful leaders are defined by clarity, which can be defined by communication within the organization, culture, absolutely, right? Empowerment of those folks, they do what they do. So how does one become a great leader then? Is it through experience? Is it through failure and figuring it out? Is there a methodology? And if you're doing workshops, what is those steps to becoming a more effective leader?
The people that I work with are, it's interesting. I work a lot of times with the senior leadership team of a company. And sometimes I also work with the emerging leaders, the ones that are making their way up through the ranks, and that the very senior leadership is saying, okay, we know that she's going to be a leader in this company. We know that he's going to be a leader in this company. So sometimes I work with them, and most of the time there's a handful of principles that I have them think about and have them talk about and work through. And one of them is the whole idea, well, it's kind of a dual idea, which is simplicity and the ability to simplify. And then along with that, kind of a companion piece that goes hand in hand with it is make things easier. And sometimes people say, you know, the logical question to ask, if I say that is, well, simplify what? Make what easier? And my answer is everything. Mm-hmm. Everything that you possibly can. And I tell you, just as a general, beyond leadership, as a business principle, man, this marketplace today, if there's one thing that the market loves, whether it's the consumer or whether it's a business to business situation, the market loves anybody in any company that can make things easier. And there's some classic examples of that.
So let's talk about that, because I did do some research. So certainly anyone in the audience, whether they're 18 or 78, would know who Steve Jobs is. So Steve Jobs certainly made things easier for the consumer with his Apple innovations and products. Is that one of the individuals you would refer to?
Listen, Steve Jobs, for my money, was like the Jedi master of simplicity. He was relentless about, and this is a great principle for people to think about. There's a quote from some guy in the 17th century, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, it's not finished when you've added everything that you can add. It's finished when you've taken away everything that you can take away. And I love that idea. Jobs was a master at that. People used to come in and he would put his teams to work and say, what are the 10 things that Apple needs to focus on next year? And they'd come to him with their report and he'd say, okay, that's great. Now make it 3. And he was a master at saying, that's too much, that's too much. His products, instead of adding features, he used to say, no, let's make it simpler, easier to use. Here's the deal. Here's something here's a question that I ask just about every group I work with. So I would invite everybody listening to answer this. How many times do you have this thought, or how often do you have this thought? You know, I'm making this way more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, and I'm the worst. I overthink everything.
Well, a couple of things there. You said that we should think, I am making this more harder than it needs to be. I think the point of leadership, though, is most leaders don't recognize they're making it harder than it needs to be. They just think it's hard, right? Why is it so difficult? Why is it so hard? So is that the differentiation of leadership?
It's one differentiation. I tell you, you've hit on a real key, because when I talk to a person in a position of leadership and they're kind of struggling and the organization is struggling and it's just hard, they will say things like, well, Joe, you've got to understand, this is a really complicated business and we've got 1,000 things that we've got to get right. But when I talk to a leader that they're a super effective leader and their company's doing well and the people are doing well, they will tend to say things like, Joe, when you think about it, this is really a very simple business. And there's a handful of things that if we get those handful of things right, we're gold. But you're exactly right. There are leaders that make it hard, but they think it's just the nature of things. I think that one of a leader's core responsibilities is to simplify the complicated, to do it for their people, to do it for their customers, to make it simple, to make it as easy as possible. And, you know, the effective leaders just have that sometimes very quiet confidence, which is, hey, everybody, calm down. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Let's not overthink this thing. We're making it too complicated. And that's a thread that I see running through leaders, which could be any kind of personality. Any kind of personality can be a great leader. It's not.
Let me stop you there. Let me stop you there because I want to dive into this deeper. I actually want to dive into one of your books and dive into this idea of differentiation in the world of everyone being a commodity and where leadership fits in that realm. So hold on, Joe, and hold on, Massimo Show audience. We'll be right back in a minute with Joe Calloway to discuss leadership, expand on this thought, and really for you all, how to stop being a commodity and differentiate yourself in a very competitive marketplace. We'll be right back. In these chaotic times, many independent contractors, solopreneurs, small business owners, well, they're stuck. Many more underemployed. And sadly, many more unemployed. That's exactly where I found myself in 2008. Remember the Great Recession of 2008? There were no jobs to be found. I remember being at my old house, trying to figure out how we survive. But with this 6-foot table, I started my venture into entrepreneurship. Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo, and we're back with the Massimo Show and our guest, Joe Calloway. We've been talking about leadership, the principles of simplicity, making these easier. But now let's talk about specifically you being different. Joe, you wrote this book called Becoming a Category of One, How Extraordinary Companies Transcend Commodity and Defy Comparison. Wow, I think most of our folks are thinking, how can I be unique? How can I be different? So Joe, can you share some principles throughout the book and help our audience out there?
Yeah, because, hey, I mean, I look at my own business. I'm in such a competitive marketplace, and my competitors, a lot of whom I know really well and are friends of mine, and my competition is so good at what they do. I mean, I watch my competition do what they do, and I think, I got to get better. And I've been thinking that throughout my whole career. And I think that constant awareness of I have to get better is what's really helped propel my business along the way. But as far as not being a commodity, let me say something that might surprise some people, because when I look at really extraordinary companies, whether it's a big company or you've got a solo practice or a small group or whatever, the ones that not only grow to success, but are able to sustain that success and keep it going through all the changes in markets and economies and technologies. Here's what they have in common, and it has to do with my definition of the wow factor. Because a lot of times people say, well, if I'm going to differentiate, I've got to have a wow factor. I've got to have something that totally sets me apart. Let me tell you what I think is the most powerful wow factor out there. It's when your customer or your client says, wow, these guys get it right every single time. You want a wow factor, get it right every time. That's the most powerful wow factor out there. That consistency of, I know that when I go to Rod, he's going to do what he said he would do, the way he said he would do it, which matches up with the way I want him to do it, and he does it every single time. That consistency of performance and consistency of excellence. I'm not a big fan of bells and buzzers. I read some leader in a company said this, and it stuck with me ever since. He said, bells and buzzers wear off. Value never does. And so I'm a big fan of whoever creates the greatest value in the marketplace, that's going to be the winner. And if you can keep creating the greatest value, then you'll keep on being a winner. So I'm not a big gimmicks guy. I mean, I like to have fun and surprise people by doing something over the top every now and then, but I'm pretty much a get better at what I do kind of guy when it comes to business.
Well, can you give us some examples? And I love that statement. I want everyone to think about that statement. Again, bells and buzzers wear off. Value never does. That is really,
I love
you
that.
have to apply that. You have to apply that. And folks, I know if you've been listening to the Massimo show, one of our earlier guests, Dr. Mark Goulston, shared with us that there's a difference between listening to. So if you're listening to this podcast, that's great, but you should be listening for. Four things you could take away and apply to your business. That's the key. And one of those is certainly if you're doing the bells and whistles and buzzers, think about value. So let's talk about value. Talk about being a differentiator. And you've worked with some amazing firms, right? Major recognizable firms, Coca-Cola, Verizon, Delta. Give us some examples of value propositions. And just from that standpoint, give us some examples to help us understand more deeply maybe what we can do in our own businesses.
Yeah, here's the deal. I think the key to value is, and I've got a chapter on this in that book that you mentioned, Becoming a Category 1. You know, if somebody were to ask me if I could have any differentiator, if I could pick any one differentiator, what would it be? My answer would be, let me know the customer and understand the customer better than anybody else, and I'll probably win. Because here's the deal. I don't define value. My customer defines value. And if there's something that I'm really good at, that I really love to do, then I've got to go out and find the market for that. There's got to be people willing to pay me to do that or to sell them that product. And so I think the real key to value, for example, because you asked for examples, one example of value is Walmart. Walmart is a price competitor. Holy cow. That's an approach to business that I want no part of.
Right.
I don't know how to do it. I don't want to compete on lowest price. Walmart has got it figured out. And to their customers, low price equals value. Well, I've done work with, for example, Mercedes. Mercedes is at the other end of the spectrum. Mercedes is, no, we're going to find the market that will pay for luxury and performance, all of that, and they'll pay a premium price for that because to them, that's value. And so I think one of my all-time favorite companies for figuring out value has always been Southwest Airlines, because Southwest just figured it out. They were the first ones to not serve meals on long, like 3 and 4 hour flights. Everybody else, I'm talking about years and years ago,
Sure.
You would actually get a real meal.
Yep.
It wasn't very good, but even in economy, they would bring you lunch on a tray. And at Southwest, they said, nope, we're going after people that want to pay a somewhat lower price, no frills, but we're going to be incredibly dependable. We're going to get them there on time. We're going to get their baggage the same place they're going. And so it's interesting. There are lots of different approaches to value.
So would you suggest that part of the value equation, I think I know the answer. I know it's how I run my company. Part of the value equation is truly knowing the audience you're going after, a specific message and proposition and everything, the culture, it's all based on that audience?
Yeah, it's based on a combination of 3 things. The first one is Well, the first one is, what have you got that you can make or sell, or a service that you can perform, and you are confident that you do it really well? Then you've got to find a market for that. And then they will have the ultimate vote on whether you do it well or not.
Right.
I mean, I don't get to decide how good I am. The market decides how good I am. And then the other thing is, and this is just more in the whole personal life satisfaction thing, are you doing something that you want to do? I've made changes in my career that, I mean, I was riding a horse that was winning the race. I just got tired of it. I mean, I got bored with what I was doing. And so on paper, according to the numbers, it didn't make sense for me to stop doing it. But I was tired of doing it. So I made a change. So you have to, I think, balance those things. There are people that say to me, no, I'm great at what I do. That's not the problem. I just can't get anybody to buy it. I go, wait a minute. If you're great at what you do, that word gets out. I mean,
what you're doing, the market doesn't want, pure and simple.
Yes, that's another good point. It could be that you're really good at what you do. There's just nobody that wants to buy it.
Right.
I mean, they'll pat you on the back and say, man, that's fantastic. But you ask them to give you money for it, and they say, well, I wouldn't go that far.
And there's examples of that every day. Look, if you go on Facebook, Twitter, Facebook especially, with all the ads that pop up, and you're just saying, no, 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 no. Yet those people, those advertisers are convinced they have the ultimate offering, regardless of what it is, for you. And
Yes.
you say no, quickly, just no, no, and no. There's a lot of reasons behind it, I know. I'll give you an example, Joe. Something happened to me actually last night. We, at the Massimo Group, we work with solopreneurs, independent contractors, solo practitioners who want to build their business. That is what we do. We started off specifically in the commercial real estate space, and since then expanded beyond that. But last night I got a call from the top 3 firms in the world in the commercial real estate space, and they asked me to coach up to 100 people, which is, look, that's a phenomenal opportunity for my company.
Yeah.
And I dug into it, and they said a couple things. Here's what we want. Okay, here's how we can do it. Not really what we do. 2 things, Rod. You got to meet this price, which was 20% of our market price, right? And I said, wait a minute. And I said, and we're going to pay for everything ourselves, not our people, which is something we just never do. We do not work with people who don't invest themselves because it doesn't work. I'm sorry, corporate America, it doesn't work. So last night I was sharing with you, I went to my home office and I'm banging away on the Mac we have upstairs, how I could craft an offering that would work and fit the model. And then, like everything, I went to bed and I woke up and said, what the hell am I doing? This is not who we are. This is not who I am. We are valuable, but not to that audience and not at that price point. No. Yes. So I think, and look, I was saying, as a leader of the company, I think you have to recognize and stick to it as firm as you can, or then you become a commodity of trying to please everybody. Is that in line with your approach?
Oh my gosh, we are so on the same page. Let me tell you, when I talk to, I'm gonna call somebody shortly because I got an email this morning. Joe, we read one of your books. Our whole management team read it. We love it. We want you to come work with us. So I'm gonna have a phone call with them. Now they already know what I do and like it based on the book, but let's say it's a company that's just, they know a little about me and they're interested. If they say to me on the call, Joe, why should we hire you? My answer for 30 years has been exactly the same. My answer is, I don't know that you should. Let's find out. Let's see if it's a good fit for you and a good fit for me. If it is, boom, let's do it. If it's not for either of us, then you need to find a resource that's more of a fit for you, and maybe I can send you in the right direction to do that. What you said was, it's so important to know what to say no to. people ask me, they say, what do you wish you had done earlier in your career? And I always say, I wish I had started saying no
Yeah.
earlier,
Oh, yeah.
because we've both been in those deals where you get into it and you go, oh my God, why did I say yes to this? It's a
Oh, yeah.
nightmare.
Oh, yeah. My father, may rest in peace, he always told me, Rod, sometimes, and that's how I learned it. He said, Rod, sometimes the best deal you ever are going to do is the one you do not do. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm gonna do everything. And until I finally said no, I realized, wow, freedom, relief, everything was gone. So Joe, leadership sounds like you could be a leader. Well, let me ask you, can you be a leader and still be a solopreneur, solo practitioner?
Oh, I think it's the exact same principles, clarity, understanding how you can help your company create value. Listen, all the things that the leader of a 20,000 employee company does, a solo practitioner or a solopreneur deals with the same factors. It's just obviously on a different scale, but the same basic decision making, how you go to market, what your business model is. Yeah, it's all the same stuff. It's just a matter of leading yourself, which sometimes is way more of a challenge than leading other people.
Okay, Joe, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. I mean, quick, folks. Hang on. We're going to get back for our famous 5 factors in 5 minutes. Joe's going to share a little about how he builds his practice. I'm going to ask Joe one last question, and then we're going to let him go. A lot more value coming up. Hold on, folks. We'll be right back with the Massimo Show. Hey, this is Rod Massimo, and we're back with Joe Calloway for this bonus section. If you're a listener to the Massimo Show, you know it's coming up. Our 5 factors in 5 minutes or less to find out how Joe builds and runs his business. And before we let him go, he's going to share with you at least one thing that you can do right away that will impact your business. So it's time to stop listening to, and it's time to start listening for. So here we go. Joe, are you ready?
Do it.
Okay. Talk about success. Let's start with factor number 1, prospecting. Joe, do you prospect?
Absolutely, every day. And I do that by putting ideas into the marketplace with the goal of people reading those ideas or hearing those ideas and going, we need to get this guy.
What forms do you use to get to the marketplace? How do you get to the marketplace?
2. One is books, which do. The prospect I got this morning is because the whole management team read one of my books. Books have been a gold mine for me, an absolute gold mine. The other thing is social media. I focus on LinkedIn. That's where real business comes to me. And I do posts, I do short posts, and I do at least a couple of articles a week on LinkedIn. And it's amazing and wonderful how often somebody will write me and say, I've been reading your stuff and I want to talk to you about coming in and working with our company.
Love it. Okay, let's talk about marketing. Beyond the social media side, how else do you market?
I think probably the main way that I market is with my existing client base. I do a lot of staying in touch with them, staying current with them. I do a lot of sending them ideas, but with them, it will be very personalized. I'll read an article and I'll think, oh my gosh, so-and-so in Vancouver, BC that I worked with 6 months ago, he was talking about this very thing. I'm going to send him that article. And I also plant the idea with my clients of who else do you know in your industry that would be interested in this?
Love it. Love it. Let's talk about productivity. What's a day in the life of Joe Calloway? How's it work?
Yeah, the number one thing that I do, number one on my plate every single day is I do these workshops and I try to practice what I preach, and I'm always, every day, thinking about ways that I can make my product, i.e. the workshop, how can I make it more effective? So I'm always tweaking and changing, and product improvement is my main thing. I spend a lot of time, as I was just talking about, I spend a lot of time writing. I spend a lot of time. Yesterday, I picked up the latest copy of Forbes magazine, and I thought, there's an idea in here that can make me money. I'm going to get in there and find it. And I'm reading for something. I'm listening for, it's exactly what you were telling people. I'm saying, I know there's something in here I can use. I just got to find it and then put it to work.
I love it. Okay, two more. Your platforms, software, CRM, tools you use, anything besides LinkedIn, any technology you use?
Yeah, I'm really lean on technology. What I tend to rely on, I don't have a formal CRM program, but I've got a system by which I know how often I need to stay in touch with my client base, and I know what the nature of all those touches have been.
Is that Excel or Google or Word? How do you track it? What software do you use to track that?
It's manual.
It's manual.
It's all absolutely manual. But I've shrunk my client base. I don't work with nearly as many customers as I used to, but I go deeper with all those customers.
Okay, finally, partners, team members, virtual, part-time, full-time. What's the Joe Calloway entity like?
Yeah, now all my partners are either virtual or they're all long distance. There's nobody else in Nashville.
And what do they do for you?
They do a number of things. A lot of my partnering is, for example, yesterday, I worked with a guy who works with new authors, people that want to write a book and have somebody help them with the whole either publishing or self-publishing process. And a lot of those authors also want to be speakers. And so he says, how about he said, sometimes I've got a client and I think, man, I want to bring Calloway in to work with him. And I said, yeah, it's a perfect fit. And so there are people that I actually partner on offerings, on programs that we do. There are also people that I partner with with some marketing projects. I've also got basically not a coach, but a sounding board.
Right.
Somebody that I bounce ideas off of all the time. And she will in a heartbeat tell me how ridiculous the idea is and make me rethink it and look a little deeper.
That's awesome. Okay. Thank you for the 5 factors in 5 minutes. Before we let you go, give the audience just one thing of the thousands of tactics and strategies you have crafted that they can do immediately to have an impact on their business.
Okay. I want them to look at every customer touch point that they have, from how they answer the phone to their contracts to their website. That could be a big one. Anything that is customer facing, and I want them to look at it with this filter, this question in mind. How can I be easier to do business with? How can I make it easier for people to do business with me? And a good place to start for a lot of people is their website. How accessible is it? How easy is it to understand? When people look at your website, do they immediately get it, what you do and what you're about? I'm telling you, if you can be easy to do business with, that's gold.
Love it. Love it. In fact, I got to tell you, I'm in the business now for this business for 12 years almost. We probably had 4 iterations of our website. In fact, we're going through a new redesign as we speak. I looked at designs last night while I was working. And so, yeah, we're definitely, I see where you're coming with that touch points, clarity, back to your word about clarity. Yeah. So integral. Joe Calloway, it's been fantastic time with you. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. And thank you for being a guest on the Massimo Show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, folks, you know how I can end this up as always, right? A lot of knowledge shared today, a lot of knowledge, but now you got to do it, because knowing isn't doing, KID, knowing isn't doing. Do not kid yourself. Start the doing. Until next time, this is Rod Santamassimo with the Massimo Show. In these chaotic times, many independent contractors, solopreneurs, small business owners, well, they're stuck. Many more
underemployed, and sadly, many, many more unemployed. That's exactly where I found myself in 2008. Remember the Great Recession of 2008? There were no jobs to be found. I remember being at my old house, trying to figure out how we survive. But with this sticks to the table, I started my venture into entrepreneurship.